Welcome back to Asia Inspires. Today, we're going to dive into the topic that is at the core of our humanity, empathy. I'm your host, Asia, and in this episode, we're going to explore the power of empathy and how it can transform relationships as well as the world around us. But before we get started, make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can be notified every time that I post a video. Let's go ahead and get started. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of someone else. It's like putting yourself in the other person's shoes. It's completely different from sympathy. Sympathy is more so having pity for someone, having pity for an experience that they're going through, but it's not necessarily about putting yourself in their shoes and seeing how would you feel in that situation. And here in the United States, if you're from another country, you may also understand, but in the United States, we're a very individualistic country. So from the time that we start school, we are taught to think about ourselves, to be selfish, not to think about other people. But imagine how different this world would be, or our society would be, if in schools and at homes we were taught to have empathy. We were taught to not just think about ourselves, but to think about other people, to put ourselves in other people's shoes and think, how would I feel if this happened to me? I would want to do this for this person because I would want them to do it for me if I was in the same situation. Empathy allows us to connect with other people. I mean, think about a person in your life who you feel like they're just very selfish. They don't try to see things from your perspective. They can only see things from their own perspective. And I know that that sounds very difficult, but we're going to talk about ways that we can practice having empathy, because if we all had empathy, like, just imagine what kind of world this would be. I mean, you're probably familiar with the golden rule, which is do unto others as you want done unto you. Well, imagine if we all had that mentality. If we all thought about, before I do this to this person, how would I feel if that person did this to me? We are going to talk about emotional control, which that has to do with empathy, but just being able to think about, I don't want this to happen to me, so I'm not going to do this to someone else. It's going to drastically change the relationships that we're in. It's going to drastically be able to change the world that we live in. Some key aspects to empathy is, number one, active listening. You cannot have empathy and put yourself in someone else's shoes if you're not listening. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So when you're having everyday conversation with people, it's important for you to listen. More than listening so that you can give a response, but listening for understanding. This involves not asking questions, or asking questions in the end, but not interrupting people. This involves you listening to get and understand, like, what is the core of what the person is saying. This allows you to put your phone down. This allows you to turn off the TV. This is telling you to be very present with this person. And I know that can be very difficult to do, especially because we live in a world where it's all about multitasking. You're supposed to do this and this. You're not expected to just be present with people. When you're sitting and you're talking on the phone with a friend, you may be scrolling on social media at the same time. Or while you're sitting, like having lunch or something like that, you're doing multiple things. Or while you're at work, you're expected to be typing while talking to a person. But active listening is about being present in the moment, not thinking about, okay, what am I going to eat for dinner tonight? Or what were we talking about earlier? What was I thinking about earlier? But focus. And if your mind begins to wander, bringing yourself back to hear what the person is saying. Like I said, listening to see what is the core of what this person is trying to tell me. In addition to actively listening and being genuine and wanting to listen to the person and listening for emotion and the core parts of what the person is saying, the second and probably the hardest part of empathy is putting yourself in that person's shoes, seeing things from their perspective, not from your perspective, but understanding that this person has a unique set of traits. They have a unique experiences that allows them to react in this way, or allows them to experience experience whatever the situation is in the way that they experienced it. Because you may be like, well, if that was me, I would have did this. Well, the thing is, it wasn't you. So try to see things from their perspective. Try to see why they reacted the way that they did. Try to see why they feel the way that they do. It's so easy for us to be like, it could have been me, or why would they do that? Try to understand why they would do that. Like I said, everybody has unique set of skills, a unique set of talents and traits and experiences that molds them to be who they are. And you're never going to 100% be able to see things from another person's perspective, but it's so important for you to try to. Don't just be like, well, it ain't me, so I don't care. No, think about, like, for example, we tend to give ourselves more grace than we give other people. It's either we give people more grace than we give ourselves, or we give ourselves more grace than we give other people. It doesn't seem to be a balance. So in the example of you're driving down the highway and somebody cuts you off, what do? A lot of people are gonna flick them off, gonna cuss them out, gonna try to speed up so you can get in front of them. But if you put yourself in their perspective, and you didn't have a conversation with them, so you don't know what was going on, maybe they were trying to be malicious and cut you off on purpose. But maybe they're in a rush. Maybe they're about to be late for work, or maybe there's an emergency where they need to hurry up and get over. Maybe they genuinely didn't see you. And sometimes perspective is about giving people the benefit of the doubt. But like I said, it's all about thinking about, if I was in their shoes, how would I feel, or what would I have done? Because chances are you've probably cut somebody off too. And then when they humped at you or whatever, you were, my bad, or you wouldn't let me over, or whatever the case may be. You gave yourself grace instead of being like, oh, well, dang, my bad, I didn't mean to cut them off. Like I said, just put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and what would you do in that situation? The third way that we can practice empathy is through emotional awareness. Emotional intelligence is so important. It's being able to recognize other people's emotions as well as your own emotions. And I know that we are just now getting into a state where we're recognizing that everyone has emotions. Men, women, black people, white people, Hispanic, everybody has emotions. So it's so important for us to continue to practice that, but not just be aware of our own emotions. Like I said, being aware of other people's emotions as well. And in order to be able to recognize other people's emotions, we have to put ourselves in their shoes and look at things from another lens, look at things from another perspective. But in order to do that, we also have to actively listen. So every point that I've mentioned is feeding off of the other. But another way for us to practice the emotional intelligence is through, which is the fourth point actually, looking at the nonverbal communication. A lot of times our actions are speaking louder than our words. So we often won't just come out and say, I'm mad. But instead we'll fold our arms, we'll roll our eyes, we'll get silent, and these are all cues that we have to pay attention to in other people. What is their body telling you that their voice is not? Empathy is a skill that can be practiced by being curious and getting to know other people who don't look like you, such as people with a different socioeconomic background, different cultures, people from different generations, different people with different religions, and so many other things. Traveling the world is a great way to get to know different people, but even if you don't have the opportunity, there are always different festivals going around in various cities where you can get to know the people who don't look like you, as I mentioned before. The goal as you get to know people is to actively listen and to pay attention to body language and emotion, and to try to place yourself in their shoes. You'll be surprised what you learn. I hope that you found this topic of empathy interesting. And if you did, make sure that you like it, leave a comment, send it to a friend, and of course, subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can get notified every time that I post a video. But most importantly, I hope that you really practice empathy, because imagine the world that we would live in if we were all empathic towards other people, not just towards our family and friends, but towards strangers, towards the person that's driving in front of you, or towards the person that's standing in front of you in line at the grocery store. Like, really just imagine what this world would look like. We would be able to see things from each other's perspective. So once again, I'm Asia. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. And if there's another video that you'd like for me to make to help us as a community to have healthier communities, to have healthier families and romantic relationships and friendships, please let me know. But until next time, continue to practice empathy.